Today is the day we start making parts. So I think I'm just gonna do one fuselage half at a time. Since I'm infusing them, I was gonna lay all the carbon in, both halves and bag both halves at the same time. But I think I'm not gonna try to bite off more than I can chew here, and I'm just gonna do one side. So I'm just gonna start waxing today, and the plan is to get everything waxed, and then once everything is waxed, I'm actually gonna put some tape in here to create some dropouts for later when I join the fuselage halves around the cockpit, and then right here at the front where the cowling mates up to it, I need a step, and then there'll be another joggle right along that seam there too. So I'm going to tape it together both inside and out the fuselage halves when they get joined. So I got to think about all that, but the goal is to get that done, get the tape in, get the PVA sprayed, then I can spray the primer, and then after that I can actually start putting the carbon in. So got a couple days off, so I'm going to try to get to the point where I'm ready to infuse hopefully next couple days or so. So exciting, stay tuned. All right, here we are polishing off the last coat of wax. So not too difficult, just takes a little bit of patience, and kind of have to keep a clean side of the rag down. And then what I'll do is I'll go ahead and polish the wax off completely, and then I will grab a brand new rag only for the final coat, and then go back and polish the whole thing. And then once that's done, I'm going to start laying the tape joggles in here to create the flanges for where I'm going to join it. And we'll start doing that in a few minutes. Just get the last bit of wax out of here. All right, that's pretty good. Now I'm gonna grab a new rag and just lightly buff the whole thing one more time. That's mainly just to get any streaks out or anything like that. And I'm using these microfiber cloths. You don't have to use this. That's just what I found on sale. Normally I just use a paper towel, like the blue shop towels or the white rags that come in a box from Home Depot. So it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but these work pretty good for a final wipe. All right, final coat of wax is on. You can see it polished up real nice. So I'm real happy with the molds, how they turned out. I've got a couple little spots that aren't perfect, but nothing to worry about. It'll make super nice parts. So next step is I'm gonna start laying in tape for the joggles. So I guess I'll show you that after I get done a little ways. You can see in the mold here, those are trim lines for the canopy, and there's also trim lines, a little more difficult to see up here for the cowling. Some of these got sanded out a little bit, so they're gone. So I'm still trying to figure out what I'm gonna do there to mark that accurately, but most likely I'll get in there with the laser and square it all up, and then put a nice piece of tape in here that follows that line exactly for the cowl trim line. And that'll create a nice lip, a joggle, so that when the cowl goes on, it butts up tight. All right, I'm gonna start doing that. As usual, I get working and forget to film stuff, so I'll catch you up. What's going on here is all of the coats of wax are on, we're good there, and then I've started laying in, actually I've completed laying in all of this 20 mil tape here. This is a PVC pipe wrapping tape. This is, let's see, this is the stuff right here. And that goes in all around the perimeter of the mold, anywhere that I'm gonna have a joint. So where the left half and the right half of the fuselage come together, this creates a little space in the actual part so that when the left and right fuselage halves are joined outside of the mold, it leaves enough room for the carbon tape. So it just creates a little step in the mold. And the reason I do that is because if you just lay up the parts like normal and then join your fuselage halves out of the mold, I want to tape the inside and the outside. So if I were to lay carbon on the outside, it would make it bulge, and then the outer mold line would be spoiled. So this way it ensures everything fits together nice and tight and exactly the way it's designed. So you can see this stuff will actually go around corners reasonably well if you heat it up and stretch it a little bit. It takes a little bit of effort, but it actually goes around pretty nicely. So this is the dropout where the tail skid cover will be. So what this will do is this will actually create a lip. So from the outside, you'll have something to bolt the cover to. So there'll be a little step in there. So you guys that have built model airplanes will sort of recognize that if you have a cowling that goes over the front of a fuselage that fits flush, or mostly in molded gliders where the nose cone fits flush, that's the same sort of thing. So done this all the way around. These are just one layer of tape thick all the way around, except for when I get to the canopy up here. This is like 2.5 layers thick. There's some fine line tape underneath that, and then the PVC tape on top of that. And that's because the canopy rail is most likely going to be 4 layers or so thick. So again, I want that to fit flush. So that's why that's a little bit thicker there. Now I was going to put in another piece of tape here. And in fact, if you look real close, you can see the trim line for the cowling. But I'm not entirely certain that that cowling line is actually as straight as I want it to be. So what's going to happen is I'll have to trim the part square and then come in and put a flange on the inside later on. Not too big a deal, but just something I have to do afterwards. And then now I've run the sealant tape around the outside for the bag. And I do that before I put the PVA on because I want to make sure it sticks real nice to the flange. So I'm going to hit it with a roller here real quick to make sure that's stuck down nice and tight. Then I'm going to give the interior one more wipe down, make sure it's nice and clean. And then I'm going to spray PVA on. And then once the PVA has cured or dried, which will probably take, I don't know, I'll let it cure for a couple hours to be safe, maybe a little longer. Then I'll spray primer over that, and then I can start actually making the part. So stay tuned, man, we're getting close. Things are going quick now. Okay, I just sprayed the PVA on, so I'm gonna let that sit for probably a couple hours, and then time for primer. And here's what it looks like after the primer's cured. Kind of like watching paint dry, right? Anyway, everything laid down fine. You know, no surprises expected or encountered there. So next thing I do is I'm gonna start cutting some peel ply strips to lay along the joggles here, upper and lower. And what that's gonna do is when I lay up the part in here with the peel ply, just the width of the tape here, maybe overlapping a little bit. When I pull the part away, I'll pull the peel ply out on the outside, and that will leave me a pre-sanded, you know, ready to bond surface, or pretty close to it. There's usually a little bit of touch up to do. And then of course the full inside will get peel plied, and that's because I have to bond in all of the bulkheads and things on the inside, so that just gives you a nice sandable surface. And the bonus is it takes the surface layer of the resin off, so it actually makes a slightly lighter part as well. So all good stuff, and we're gonna keep going. Okay, I got all the peel ply in over the tape joggles, so they just get spray glued in, so not too difficult. What I did was I took my peel ply and I cut, you know, about 4 inches off, and this is the factory edge. So I wasted a bit in the center, which I can still use later, but that gives me a nice straight line to follow the tape joggle line there. So they're all in, good to go there. Primer roll looks good. Got my roll of carbon set up back there, and I'm gonna start pulling the first layer in. So the first layer of carbon will be at a 0.90, so one continuous piece from the nose here, and then, you know, all the way to the tail. And then from there, the rest of the layers are gonna go in on the bias to help with torsional stiffness. I got my son to help me pull the first layer of carbon into the mold here, so it's all put in place, and it's just in there dry. It's just laying there, with the exception of up on the vertical sides. I just put a little bit of spray glue up there to help me keep it in place. And if you look close, you can see the outline of the tape where the joggle is going to be. So that again is going to give a lip so that when the corresponding part fits on, it'll mate flush. So I'm pretty happy with this. Looks really nice. And the hardest part actually was back here around the tail. So what you have to do is you need to trim this exactly flush. You can see there's just a hair sticking up here, but for the most part it's down flush. And the reason for that is if you were to bag this with the material over the edge of the lip, that's going to create some thickness and will not let the molds join correctly. So your part will actually end up bigger or not fitting together correctly if you don't do that. So it's flush trimmed all the way around, and the bulk of my trimming, I use an electric scissor, which is right here. So it's just an electric shear, and that lets me get really close, and then any place that I need to really get up close and trim, I use these flush cut scissors. And pretty simple, you just get right up along here and try to look through the camera and do this at the same time. There we go. It's a little tedious, but maybe took me 10 minutes to do the whole thing, so not a big deal there. So this first layer in, as I said before, is 0.90, and what that means is the fibers are oriented 0 and 90. So that let me put one continuous piece in the whole mold. That just really no reason to do that except for you know, maybe a seam might show on the outside, but I really doubt it. It really doesn't matter. So the rest of the layers are going to go in on a 45, so all the fibers will be running this direction, so 45, 45, and that helps again with torsional stiffness. And yeah, so progress is much quicker now that the molds are done, obviously, and I've been able to get right on it. So my goal is to get all the layers in here today and get the bag on it and the transfer media, flow media put in there and basically under vacuum. I don't know if I'll pull resin into it today or not. I'm still wondering if I have enough time. I've got some other stuff I need to do today. So it may not get infused today, but it'll be all ready. All right, keep watching. Here we go. All right, so where we last left off, I've done quite a bit. And as usual, I skipped a few steps filming, so please forgive me. But what we're looking at here is I have the peel ply on the inner layer here. On top of the peel ply, I have this green infusion mesh. And what that's for is to let the resin transfer along the whole laminate. On top of that green mesh, I've got this 1/2-inch spiral wrap, and this is just the stuff that you would buy to wrap wires, like wrap a wire loom sort of thing. So nothing special there, and it goes all the way from that end in a straight line, all the way down to that end. Roughly straight line. I try to bisect the layup so I can sort of even out which way the resin has to flow either way. These blue things are the resin infusion ports, and these are 3D printed. So a buddy of mine gave me that file, so I was able to 3D print those to make more instead of having to order them. So that's cool. I have 4 of those total. One there, one there, one there, and then the original one that I had here. Now my plan is to just let resin in the center one here, and it should run along this whole channel all the way to that end, all the way down there to that other end. Now for some reason during the infusion that I can't get the resin to the extremities, I can block that one off and introduce resin there if it needs it here, or the same with the other 2 ports down there. So they're just basically for insurance. Around the outside, I've got the same spiral tube right here, and it goes all the way around the perimeter of the whole part. A little difficult to see, but all the way around there and back up over there and all the way down, comes back over to here, and it connects up to my vacuum port. So this is the vacuum line. So the resin is gonna flow in the center, and the vacuum is going to go flow out around the perimeter. So again, this goes all the way around the part, and we'll pull the resin out of the center channel, up the sides, and along the length till it reaches the end of this peel ply here. So from there, we're hooked up to my vacuum pump. So this is my homemade vacuum pump, and this is a gassed twin piston pump. A lot of guys will repurpose pumps out of a refrigerator or something like that, and that works fine. I find with larger layups like this that having a little bit more pumping power is good. And you can also see that I've got this PVC, I believe it's 6-inch PVC vacuum canister here. That's probably around 5 gallons. I've never done the calculations, but all that does is lets the vacuum accumulate in here while the pump is running with the line pinched off. And then when you open the line, it's a large volume, so it tends to pull the bag down relatively quick. Now, not gonna make a whole lot of difference on a part this big, but it also acts sort of like a spring. So in other words, it lets the pressure fluctuate a little bit, and this big reservoir of vacuum helps to stabilize that. There's electronic pressure switch here. It turns off at, I believe, around 23 inches and then comes back on at like 19 inches. So the pump doesn't run the whole time. It'll pull the vacuum down to where it'll shut off, and then should there be a bag leak or something like that, it'll cycle down and then the pump will rest and it'll kick it back on. So I'm just about ready to turn the pump on and start drawing down the bag. Not gonna infuse it right now. The goal of this is just to fire it up, evacuate as much of the air out of the layup as I can, and make sure the bag is gonna, number one, seal, but number two, it'll stretch in all the right places. We won't have any bridging or anything like that. So once that's done, I will probably let that sit under vacuum for a couple of hours, maybe just an hour, and monitor the cycling and make sure that we don't have any massive leaks. Because if you have a massive leak with an infusion, that can be a real problem. So you need it as close to airtight as possible. So at any rate, there it is. And I'm gonna switch on the vacuum pump here in a second, and then I've already gone around the layup once, but I have this roller, and I just go around the seam and roll the tacky tape down, make sure the bag is stuck well. There's a lot of little intricate kind of corners and things to go around, so there's lots of places where I could potentially introduce air. I've only got a few pleats, one pleat there. I was able to do the whole bottom side with no pleats. I've got one more pleat, little guy right here. Another little pleat right there, and then one more pleat right there. So it actually sealed up pretty well. This particular bag that I use is called Stretchy Bag. It's, well, like the name says, it's very stretchy, so it conforms really well. And I made sure to leave enough belly in the bag, you know, down here in the middle. There's a lot of slack, and that's because I want the bag to draw down in to the bottom and then tighten up along the sides. And again, make sure you don't want to get any bridging. A lot of folks think that vacuum is magic and that as long as you've got it under vacuum, it'll pull it down tight. Well, I've ruined enough parts to know that that's not true. So just a little bit of extra care up front will hopefully help in the long run. So anyway, we're gonna flip it on here and see if we can pull a vacuum and see what happens. All right, so I just kind of have to babysit it. You can see the resin flowing in there. There's my resin mixing station. My vacuum set up. That's a resin trap in case any resin flows out of the tube. All right, everybody. It's the next day after the infusion, and it all went well, so I'm starting to unbag here. Interesting, it's pretty nice out today, sun's shining, but we had a major storm. We had actually quite a bit of snow and quite a bit of rain over the past couple days, but it's melted now, so nice to see the sun out. It's pretty. Anyway, I'm pulling the bag and materials out of this. I can tell that the skin is gonna be great, so I'm super stoked about that, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to do this with two hands, let alone with one, so I apologize for the poor video, and my phone died yesterday, so I didn't get any more shots of the infusion after this. But anyway, here's what it looks like to sort of pull it out here. It really takes two hands to do. So Yeah, sorry, I can't do much better than that with one hand, but there you go. It looks pretty good. So I'm gonna keep pulling it out here, and we'll see what we got. I forgot to mention that this is how I decided to unbag this. And one of the ways you can tell if you got a good cure, this is my resin feed line. So let me see if I can grab it here. If you give it a squeeze and you get a snap like that, that means your resin cured properly. It's not gummy or soft. So again, it's a little tough to show, but get a nice clean snap like that, we're in good shape. So still pulling the bag. Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, it's going. All the dark is where the resin is being pulled in. And I'm actually chasing a vacuum bag leak, and that's why my pump keeps cycling, so that's going to interrupt us here a little bit. But essentially what happens is the resin comes in, flows down the middle center channel here, and then since the vacuum is all around the perimeter of the whole part, all the resin migrates up, kind of like doing a big canoe, I guess. So you can see right here where it's kind of going a little bit faster, that's where the mesh overlaps, and it's twice as thick there, so there's a little more physical volume for it to move. So I think for the next one, I'm going to use some thicker mesh. It'll help it go a little quicker, but this has been going, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes or so. So it's doing really well. I'm happy with it. Here's my vacuum setup over here. There's a resin trap right there. So that's just made out of a ball canning jar. So in case any resin comes down in here, it'll get trapped into here before it gets into my pump system. It's just a homemade gas dual piston pump, and that's just a piece of PVC pipe for volume. It's got an eBay pressure switch on it right there, and I've got it set to 21.5 inches of vacuum. There's my resin pump, because I got to keep that bucket filled, and that's it. We just sit here and babysit it now and let it do its thing. Once the whole skin is saturated, I'll shut the resin inflow off and then keep the vacuum on it for probably overnight. But that's it. It's going well. If you listen close, let me see if I can, before the pump comes back on, you can actually hear the resin. Oh well. So now we just wait. I'm happy that I put multiple fill ports in, but I'm only filling it through this one here. So I'm happy about that, because it seems like the resin is migrating along the whole length just fine. So we're all good there. It's going to make it all the way down to here. All right, that's it. More when it's more exciting later. All right, that was tedious, but I got the whole bag out. And overall, I'm really, really happy. There's a few spots here where the peel ply bridged, but it's full of resin, so it's not raw cloth. It's actually hardened up. So just needs a scuff there, and it'll be ready for the next step. So thanks for following along, guys. And I think we're going to end it here. The next video will be fitting the Nomex honeycomb core, which I have right here. I'm just going to start fitting it today. So this will lay in there. We'll cut it, fit it, bond it in, and that's going to give us our sandwich core construction, which will be very light and super strong. So again, thanks for following along, and we'll see you in the next video.